A tool that a hunter uses to bring down the beasts in Monster Hunter World are vast and varied, but none are more important than the weapons they use. I'm Darcblade, and in this series of the Monster Hunter World weapons, we are going to be taking a look at the various weapons and tools in the game. In this episode, we're going to bring you an overview guide to the bow. The bow is one of the few long-range weapons in the game, meaning that you don't actually have to get up close and personal with a monster to take them out. That being said, they are fairly simple weapons with very few combos. However, their complexity comes in the form of knowing what ammo type, or in the bow's case, what coating to use. For the bow, basically you are coating your arrow in certain elements or properties to enhance it. But in this episode we're going to be taking a look at the main functions of the bow itself. Now, for the purpose of this guide, I will be quoting PlayStation controls, although if you are using a different system you can either look in the description below or convert them yourself to whatever system you are using. Now, the basics for the bow include aiming the bow, which is done by holding down L2. You can then fire the bow with R2, or even charge it up for a shot that will deal more damage by holding R2 and then releasing it. You also have a quick shot available to you, which is done by pressing circle. The quick shot also has a wide spread, so it comes in handy when you're close to a monster. And then you have the Dragon Piercer, which is done by pressing triangle and circle together. This move has a fairly long wind-up time, which will leave you vulnerable, but it does hit a lot harder than your normal shots. On top of that, if you press triangle, you will use whatever coating you have highlighted, indicated down in the bottom right of your corner above your potions and such. You can also press triangle a second time to remove that said coating if you so desire. Now let's get on to talk about the functions available to the bow. First is the shoot function. This, as I already briefly mentioned, means that when using the bow, as in you're holding down R2 whilst the bow is drawn, it will increase its damage, but by doing so, by charging up the bow with holding down R2, it will consume your stamina. So this is something to be aware of. You can also increase the strength of your shots, thus increasing its damage tier by shooting in quick succession, or by even dodging after a shot and then shooting immediately again. It takes a little practice, but once you've mastered this, it can come in really handy, not only for your damage output, but also your survivability, especially if you can utilise the shoot dodge shoot mechanic. And the second functionality is the coat arrows function. As I already mentioned, you can coat your arrows in certain coatings to increase their potency or enhance them in various ways. Whilst in the beta we only had a select few of them, in the main game you'll have many more. These include close range coatings that boost the damage in exchange for diminishing your overall range, power coating which increases your attack power, paralysis coating which can potentially paralyze an enemy, poison coating that poisons an enemy, sleep coating that can potentially put to sleep an enemy, and blast coating that applies a blast effect to your arrows. One function I should mention as well is that your arrows don't have an infinite range. However, on your HUD heads-up display, it will indicate if your arrow is going to be out of range and thus dealing pretty much no damage. And then finally, the last functionality is the lunging melee attack. This is a melee attack available to the bow. This is done by whilst aiming the bow. If you dodge afterwards and then press triangle, it will cause your hunter to lunge at a monster's location. Whilst it may not be the most damaging attack in the world, it allows you to potentially mount a monster. Now let's move away to talk about some basic combos available to the bow. Now the bow itself doesn't really have combos, but nonetheless these are additional moves you can use after pressing a series of buttons. The first is the arc shot, which is done by holding R2 and then after hold R2 a second time whilst holding circle at the same time. You will know you've done this right by your hunter firing an arrow into the air and raining down on a monster's location a series of smaller projectiles. Whilst you're holding down the buttons you can also aim this should you need to. And finally is the power shot, which is done by aiming your bow, holding down R2, charging that bow up, and then after firing it, immediately press circle again. This will follow up the strong shot with a quick power shot for enhanced damage. This comes in very handy when you're up close with a monster. Now let's move on to talk about the pros and cons available to the bow. The first pro is it's a long range weapon which keeps you at a safe distance away from a monster and still allowing you to deal damage to them. The second pro is it has a wide range of uses thanks to its coatings. You can adapt the bow to many situations and apply many debuffs to a monster. However, its biggest downside is its poor at close range. Yes, it does have some close range options, but to be honest, if you're intending to fight a monster in close range, you're better off going with a melee weapon. Now overall the bow is my personal favourite out of the long range weapons. Its versatility comes in really handy in hunting most of the monsters. Whilst it may not be able to fight monsters at the longest ranges when compared to the bow guns, it still allows you to keep your distance from a monster. With that in mind, you're also able to remain quite mobile when compared to the other long range weapons. The other major con though is that with the coatings, you do have a finite amount of them, so you can run out. They can be replenished through farming, but nonetheless, if you run out in the middle of a fight, you are hampering its capabilities. Also, as I mentioned in the pros and cons, the issues and benefits of the coatings can make or break a bow user. If you don't mind the micromanagement of having to farm and keep up your supply of coatings, then you're probably going to get along with the bow really well. However, if you can't, then it may not be for you. Nonetheless though, if you can keep on top of the coatings, then you'll be able to provide your team a great source of range damage as well as status effects you can inflict on a monster. Anyway, I hope you found this guide helpful, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you an overview of the bow in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.